Good morning. Welcome to Northwest Unitarian Universalist Church. For those of you who celebrate the Jewish holidays, we wish you Shana Tova in advance of Rosh Hashanah. Our youth who are here in person will have apples and honey for part of their snack this morning, with the hope that their new year will be sweet. So may it be for all of us. If you are a visitor here and would like to stay in touch and are on Zoom, please fill out the visitor form that you see in the chat box. The chat feature has been disabled except for chatting directly with the tech hosts. If you are having problems with Zoom, use the chat function or the raise hand function in Zoom, or all else failing, wave to Ben and he will help you. I ask for your continuing patience as we move forward in our developing multi-platform services. And I also ask for your feedback about what's working for you, whether you're here in the building or if you are joining us on Zoom. We're glad that we are able to gather this way, and particularly glad that we are able to gather on Zoom because it allows our minister, Reverend Kevin DeBeck, to plan and present our service today from Indiana, where he is at home with his family this holiday weekend. Just going to share the Zoom or the announcements very quickly with you. Reopening is clearly a priority, but what we are doing at Northwest is completely dependent upon what's happening with COVID in our region. Currently, we are allowing us to meet in person. Everyone is remaining masked except when they are speaking from the chancel. We're working at respecting everyone's social distancing and respect the needs of those who want people to stay at least 6 feet away from them. The youth are meeting today outside, and they're taking mask breaks periodically so they can stay comfortable. If you'd like to become a member of Northwest, you can contact Cheryl Goldberg, our membership governor, or you can contact Ben Gable, our congregational administrator, and learn about signing the book. We'll have Children's Chapel resuming next Sunday from 9:30 to 10:15 online, and we will have youth programming here as long as the risk levels allow that. Eva Leventer is our acting director of religious education, and she can answer your questions. We have one virtual service auction. We have a virtual service auction coming up in November, and we have one spot left for a fabulous Flint tour. You can contact Sherry Smith for that. We have a water communion coming next week. Look for communication from the church about how we're going to handle that. You can stay connected with Northwest through our Breeze app on your phone, through our newsletter, and our website, as well as our Northwest Facebook Friends page. Our Board of Governors is meeting this week, so next week we will have, next Sunday we will have banter with the board after the service, and we'll figure out how to do that here in the congregation before then. Our September plate collection is going to the Southfield Emergency Fund, and the city of Southfield provides for emergency needs of residents in the community. Our basket is in front of me here, and I will try to remember to remind you at the end of the service to please come up and put your contribution there. Half of the money goes to our chosen charity and half of it comes here to the congregation.
My opening words this morning are from the Reverend Megan Visser. And she says, "We enter this sanctuary for kindness and comfort. May rough, worn hands and aching backs be healed. We enter this sanctuary of hope for equality. May those who labor to survive live to know justice. We enter the sanctuary of love and vocation. May our bonds of solidarity be strengthened. We enter the sanctuary of courage and friendship. May we proceed hand in hand towards freedom." My name is the Reverend Kevin DeBeck. My pronouns are he, him, and his, and I welcome you all to Northwest UU's worship service this morning.
Okay, so please greet your neighbors on Zoom. And now, if the people in the congregation would turn toward Alex and wave to the folks on Zoom. Thank you so much. Thank you, Alex. And thank you, Ben and Ralph, who are participating as techs today, and to Ken for everything he did to help prepare for the service. The words for our chalice lighting come to us from the Reverend Judith Quarles. At this hour, in small towns and big cities, in single rooms and ornate sanctuaries, Many of our sibling Unitarian Universalist congregations are also lighting a flaming chalice. As we light our chalice today, let us remember that we are part of a great community of faith. May this dancing flame inspire us to fill our lives with the Unitarian Universalist ideals of love, justice, and truth. And thank you, Beata. Our first hymn this morning is When Our Heart is in a Holy Place.
When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we trust the wisdom in each of us, every color, every creed and kind, and we see our faces in each other's eyes, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we tell our story from deep inside, and we listen with a loving mind, and we hear our voices in each other's words, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we share the silence of sacred space, and the God of our heart stirs within, and we feel the power of each other's faith, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place.
My reading this morning is from Eugene Debs, and this comes from his statement he read to the court when he was convicted of violating the Sedition Act in September of 1918. And these are his words. I am opposing a social order in which it is possible for one man who does absolutely nothing that is useful to amass a fortune of hundreds of millions of dollars, while millions of men and women who work all the days of their lives secure barely enough for a wretched existence. Our next hymn is number 109, As We Come Marching, Marching.
As we come marching, marching in the beauty as well as bodies. Give us bread, but give us roses as we come marching, marching, unnumbered women dead, go crying through our singing their ancient song of bread. Small art and love and beauty, their trudging spirits due. Yes, it is bread we fight for, but we fight for roses too. As we come marching, marching, we bring the greater days. The rising of the women means the rising of the race. No more the drudge and idler, and the toiler once reposes, but a sharing of life's glories, bread and roses, bread and roses.
A long time ago in a land that's, pretty far away, I was sitting in my high school government class when the subject of holidays came up. The discussion was around the idea of which holidays were more relevant than others and which ones theoretically could be done away with. The usual suspects came up: Columbus Day, Arbor Day, and there were a few other sundry days that we talked about. And then it came around to Labor Day, where my teacher, who in his heart was a conservative, pontificated out loud about the relevance of labor unions. And of course, the irony being that him being a teacher, he belonged to one. While I had respect for this teacher, and I still do, I kind of sat there silently seething. At the time, my father worked at a paper mill in my hometown, and he belonged to the United Paper Workers International Union, Local 403. I had a better understanding of perhaps most of my classmates did on the hazards he faced when he would work his 12-hour shifts at the mill. The chemicals that are used to break down the wood into pulp and then to make the paper are very hazardous, and my dad willingly worked around them every time he walked into the mill. And he worked into the mill, and even in my teenage years, it bothered me that those around me couldn't or wouldn't understand that. The reason why I mention this today is that Monday, as we all know, is Labor Day, and in the aftermath of COVID and an almost fascist takeover of our federal government, workers and workers' rights are more relevant now than ever. And while the percentage of union members continues to drop, the resistance of worker exploitation is now on the rise. Now, I know in Michigan, and especially in the part of Michigan where our congregation is located, worker resistance is woven into the fabric of the culture. It was at Flint where GM workers in the 1930s conducted the first sit-down strike. It was in 2019 that the United Auto Workers struck against General Motors in one of the largest strikes in over a decade. I've only been here a month, but I've already heard stories of Harry Bennett, who was Henry Ford's enforcer, and apparently who kept lions and tigers for pets and would do anything Ford told him to do to keep the unions out of the Ford plants. Although Ford himself finally recognized the United Auto Workers in April of 1941. In the 19th century, we have strikes like in the strikes that took place in Homestead, Pennsylvania, and the Pullman factories outside Chicago that shaped how workers did and didn't get the rights and wages and working conditions that would make earning a living more livable. Some were more successful than others, unfortunately. While we really don't see large-scale strikes anymore, it doesn't mean that worker resistance has gone away. In fact, we're in the midst of something right now called the Great Resignation, where during the shutdowns of last year and of the continuing pandemic, people are realizing that they don't necessarily have to endure the low-wage, no-benefit jobs anymore. Perhaps you've witnessed this already. You see it almost every time you go out to dinner and the waitstaff takes a little longer to get to you. Or if you drive through a fast food restaurant, The pandemic we continue to be in has worn thin many traditionally steadfast regulations, norms, and customs, and they have bent or even toppled during this global reshaping of what is now usual. Not so much looking for silver linings as much as trying to make meaning of the latest chapter in life so that it is not to be meaningless. We reflect on these new norms. One such example, upon first glance, is very simple. But as the camera pans out and you see a wider pattern, change has come to fast food work. Without firing a cannon or calling for a strike or uniting, which is unfortunate, America's fast food workers and other traditionally low-wage earning workers have used collective bargaining to change the economy. Now, do they even know about unions or actual collective bargaining? All of these low-wage earners, considered by many to be unskilled or even invisible, all of these workers who did not continue going into a terrible job, all of those who did not apply in the first place, all the managers who could not keep a staff and became disgruntled, all of these people showed us how necessary they are to our consumerist way of life. Something has to give. Either they get paid more for the status to remain quo, or we all stop eating at restaurants. Now, in this quest for balance and equity resides in every heart, and so does the knowledge that, gone unchecked, human nature does have a tendency toward garnering power and using it over others, like many animals. This predilection toward labor unions and collective bargaining is in our DNA. Our sense of fairness, our need for balance, knowledge of abusive tendencies. So even though the pandemic drive-through revolution wasn't exactly an organized strike, it was a form of unintentional, collective, though silent, bargaining. As the arc of the universe bends toward justice, so the benefits of unions continue to guide our steps, even in the absence of organized membership. This is what we hold as valuable and dear regarding unions, the use of collective bargaining. I remember my wife and I watching the musical, The Pajama Game. Do any of you remember that one? It has Doris Day and John Raitt in it, and it's very good. And being astonished that there was a time when labor unions were so prevalent in the consciousness of the average middle-class, mostly white American worker that a musical could be made about it. Now, the changes I see around me in my middle-aged white dude skin gives me hope, even though, as I may not love all of the changes, I think they're necessary. On this Labor Day, of those 15-year-olds who want the same rite of passage we all did, our first job, do you recall what your first job was? Mine was in a McDonald's in my hometown, and I worked at my last year in high school through my first year in college. Now, was it a fast food place or was it retail? Now, these jobs teach us about consumerism up close and personal because, as they tell us, the customer is always right. In the scenario about to unfold, the depiction of the fast food worker as being a kid is meant for this specific depiction. But the actual numbers, the actual people who are doing these jobs, from a U.S. labor report in April this year shows that, and these are the words from the report, the average age of an employed fast food worker is 27 years old. The most common ethnicity of fast food workers is white at 66%, followed by Hispanic or Latino at 15%, and Black or African American at 10%. So the fact that people think that these jobs are just for teenagers is a misnomer. We are usually taught at these first jobs that the customer is always right. We are trained how to be courteous and helpful when they are not right, so they still feel right. But in today's highly politicized, divided nation, sometimes the customer is not always right. Not right in the head or not right in the heart. In fact, sometimes the customer is looking forward to being abusive to somebody who is paid to put up with it. And I'm sure all of us know what that looks and feels like. In many cases, the inner bigot knows that they will be able to go to a fast food place and yell at a brown-skinned person. At any fast food restaurant, any worker there expects to be demeaned and abused daily. in this toxic brew simmering all through the pandemic, mixing racism and supremacy and classism and fear and grief, sometime the pot boils over. That kid making minimum wage is not just learning the difference between grilled and flame broiled. They are determining their own worth based on how our culture sees them. And my labor union heart sees that these kids and their older cohorts too have said through their actions that enough is enough. I don't love that I can't simply grab an orange soda anymore, but the deeper meaning, it makes it worth my inconvenience. That's how change works, incrementally. We often don't notice that somebody else has been going through the paces until it affects us personally. And I've seen this change happen with my own children. About a year ago, they both got jobs at the Dairy Queen, one of the Dairy Queens here in Elkhart. And once the initial excitement of finally being able to earn their own money wore off, they both realized that what they were doing didn't really mean a whole lot to them. They earned barely over minimum wage, and they had to put up with abusive customers or coworkers that didn't respect them. On top of that, my daughter, who's very allergic to peanuts, noticed that after working the blizzard machine, she would come home and she would have hives all over her wrists. She told them that she really shouldn't be working the next section because of her allergies, and her pleas went unheeded. After about 6 months and another COVID surge, they both walked away. Now, what they did after their time at Dairy Queen, I believe, kind of serves as a metaphor for what's happening in the culture as a whole. My son decided he was going to give college another try and is now back at school with the ambition of becoming a special ed teacher. My daughter is in her senior year in high school, and over the summer, she worked as an intern at the local food pantry as a teen grower. And this is a program, it's called Church Community Services. And part of what they do, they take food donations to give to people, and they also have huge tracts of land to grow fresh vegetables that they then give away to people who need it. And so over the course of her time there, she learned how to plant and maintain food crops. Now, since that ended, she's working at both the farmer's market and at a plant store selling houseplants a few days a week. And this coming week, she'll do the fall program at the same food bank, learning how to harvest the crops she grew in the summer and how to put the garden to bed as winter approaches. So as a result of the Great Resignation, companies and fast food chains are finally doing the work that our political leaders either haven't had the courage to do or the political will to do: raise wages and offer benefits to employees. In Indiana, the average minimum wage is finally approaching $15 an hour. Without a change in the law, it's hard to say how long these wage increases will last. But as Twisted Sister said in the 1980s, the fact that workers ain't going to take it anymore is finally moving the needle ever so slightly. And don't listen to those voices who complain that improved unemployment is causing this so-called worker shortage. They're finally doing what these voices used to say when workers would go on strike. Would they casually say, well, if you don't like where you're working, find another job, usually in a smarmy kind of voice. Well, they're finally taking that advice, and as a result, you might have to wait a little longer to get your Big Mac or steak and eggs at your favorite watering hole. And I would advise you all as you're going through your day that, yes, you might be inconvenienced and some of the service you receive might be a little slower than it used to be. But think of those auto workers almost 90 years ago who sat down so that the people who would follow them would work in better conditions than they did. If I could have a conversation with that government teacher now, first of all, I would tell him how much I enjoyed that the class we all had all those years ago. And I hope that in his retirement, he is enjoying the benefits of his collectively bargained things that he earned in his time while teaching, and hope that maybe some of his right-leaning views have changed somewhat. And I cross my fingers and hope he didn't become a Trumper. I think he was smarter than that. So on this Labor Day, I also think of my dad, who served as a couple of terms as president of his union, and while he was there, did his best to take care of his fellow paper workers and to give them the best chance of working in a safe environment and a decent wage, and the knowledge that someone was looking out for their interests. May those folks who support the daily life of their neighbors, often unthanked, feel their worth and continue to bend the landscape of our economy toward justice and humanity. Our closing hymn today is number 349, We Gather Together. Before I say our closing words, I'd want to mention that part of my sermon today was written by my wife, the Reverend Amy DeBeck. I want to give her credit where credit is due. Our closing words today are from the Reverend Eric Williams, and he says, "Blessed is the path on which you travel. Blessed is the body that carries you upon it. Blessed is your heart that has heard the call. Blessed is your mind that discerns the way. Blessed is the gift that you will receive by going. Truly blessed is the gift that you will become on the journey. May you go forth in peace."
Once we got here, I wouldn't get the "you're muted" signal, but I just did. So I want to say thank you to Reverend Kevin and to Reverend Amy for that great service this morning. It is wonderful to be gathered. Ben will put you in chat rooms, breakout rooms rather, now that the service is over, after we've heard the postlude. It's so nice to be able to see those visual cues that, oops, you stepped on somebody's toes. But now we all get to take a nice deep breath, hear our postlude, and then those of you who are on Zoom can go into one of the breakout rooms and have a wonderful weekend conversation.